I'm Fatheree.
It's Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek. And on this installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, we're going to be talking about the 4th episode of Star Trek Discovery. The Butcher's...
Or the second if you start from the previous one.
What feels like the second episode.
You know, before you even say the title of it, I'm going to interrupt. And I saw it said in a thread somewhere, some people promoting the notion like they could have made that with the third episode, the first one, and showed most of what happened in the first one through flashbacks. And I think that would have at least been the kind of interesting and might have been better for me. I don't know.
That would have been worse for me, though, because I wanted to see Starfleet doing more traditional Starfleet exploration, keeping the peace type stuff.
That makes sense.
Before it all goes to hell.
Their notion was, begin with her, a disgraced prisoner, mutineer, and you're like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, that would have thrown me. I needed to be eased into that.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a fair argument, too. I thought it was an interesting notion that you could have kind of Pulp Fiction timelined it a little bit. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about episode 4.
The Butcher's Knife cares not for the lamb's cry.
Which in this case has a pretty specific meaning in it. It's almost more literal version of it, where there's a creature, there's a lamb stand-in, and there's a potential butcher. But is it Burnham or is it Lorca? Or are they one and the same? And she's the scalpel.
Interesting.
I got a little Pulp Fiction. I was running with the Ezekiel 25:17 there. But it's a provocative title. I like the title, and if people are gonna be talking about this episode, you did note the episodes are for sure one tapestry and less distinct, than a classic Star Trek episode, and I think even than some Battlestar Galactica episodes. But that was also kind of a tapestry. But they'll remember this is the tardigrade episode.
The tardigrade episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the creature that Captain Lorca beamed aboard from the USS Glenn last week. And it turns out Lorca's not as secretive as I thought he was going to be. He's a little bit more transparent than I thought he was going to be with his weird menagerie of strange scientific...
His Island of Dr. Moreau horrors.
Where he says he studies war. That's where he goes to study war. But he shows the creature, the tardigrade monster.
Yeah, we called that, by the way. We did point that out in the third episode.
Check the tape.
Yeah.
But they end up calling it Ripper.
Yep. Pretty cool name.
He approaches Burnham and asks her, I can't say Commander Burnham because she doesn't have a rank at this point.
Sure, I guess she's just sort of an advisory.
Yeah, or we can call her Mickey, like Tilly wanted to call her. But Michael goes to study the creature at the request of Captain Lorca. He brings her into his weird menagerie room and says, your job is to study this creature, give me any information on it that we could use to win this war against the Klingons.
Specifically pointing out, it took phasers set to kill shot at it. It
withstood batleths.
Yeah, and its claws could cut through the hull of the ship. So it's crazy powerful if they can find a way to use it.
Yeah, and we also have a mining colony, I guess, Corvin 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that planet is being attacked by Klingons, a very valuable target because, as we know from the original series, starships run off of dilithium. Mm-hmm. And they need the dilithium at Corvin 2. They can't let it fall into Klingon hands, and there's also a lot of civilians there who are being killed by Klingon attacks.
What's interesting is that for living in a post-scarcity Federation, they still need gas, apparently, and there's still lots of wars and fighting over resources.
Well, that's not why they're fighting, though. They're not fighting over dilithium crystals. They're fighting over other reasons, and
It's true, but if you could take out a single thing, and didn't they say it's 40% of the Federation's dilithium crystals? I mean, maybe you could go somewhere else, but I think that was partially just for the drama of the episode,
right?
But I'm like, if you could take out 40% of an enemy's fuel with a single attack, then there is a scarcity problem. But presumably they could like move somewhere else without like wildly destructive trouble. I don't know.
But there is some uncomfortable animal experimentation going on.
Yep.
Commander Landry is still an asshole in this episode.
Yep.
And much to my delight, she is killed.
I really was not sure that's where they were going. I was like, oh, she's going to become badly injured. Nope. You got your wish.
We get to see the spore drive in action after they figure out how to incorporate the tardigrades' mental mapping of the mycelium network that connects the universe together.
Very nicely put.
And we see the Discovery go and win a battle against the Klingons, saving Corvin 2.
Yep. And getting there with all kinds of crazy bridge spinning stuff. We finally
the ship spins around like crazy when they engage the spore drive.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that was... I presumed that the kind of the visual flip of it was not meant to be literal so much as like
when the disc starts spinning, like that's
for
that's
sure
a physical
literal
movement.
Right.
But then it starts spinning on this axis and going like that.
Yeah. I do kind of want him to like at least edit in one scene of the bridge crew just bouncing all over the inside of the ship.
It's kind of absurd looking, but for some reason I kind of like the visual of it. Like, well, I'm going to look forward to. It's like when you're a little kid watching Voltron, and you always look forward to the part where like the lions merge together into the big robot. Yeah, like I'm gonna be looking forward to when the spore drive gets engaged every time I'm watching Discovery.
Had they used the term spore drive before this episode?
They, I think it appeared on a display in last week's episode. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I knew that going into tonight.
It's a little the sort of spinning motion is like a sort of more extreme version of like when the Millennium Falcon goes into warp and all the starfields spin behind it. I didn't ever think that they were supposed to be like spiraling into the universe, but it makes you sense something big happened.
Yeah, it's a cool visual.
Yeah.
Probably not as simple and perfect as the Millennium Falcon going into the hyperdrive.
Yeah,
but it's still pretty cool. I dig it. But we also get to see the Klingons again. We see Vok dealing with the death of T'Kuvma and L'Rell, and she finally gets to speak more than just those couple lines that they gave her in the initial 2 episodes.
Yeah, she gets this fairly major part. And we also see the Klingons, if I'm not mistaken, speaking of scarcity, dealing with sort of wartime problems, like literally like they're starving.
Yeah. So
they're sort of on the front lines, and I think they said they've spent the last 6 months sort of rebuilding their ship, right?
Yes. And so from the attack with the corpse bomb, which you love.
Yep, it's a favorite.
The Battle of the Binary Stars.
Now finally they're getting into animal cruelty. So
yeah, the sarcophagus ship is under the command of Vok, and they're still trying to make repairs. They're running out of food. The Klingon Cole, who we saw in the Battle of the Binary Stars on the hologram, and he is kind of an asshole to T'Kuvma. He talks shit to Vok because he's an albino, and that's offensive to like a pure, healthy Klingon.
What a guy.
But he seems to be turned around. He seems to be loyal to Vok. He says, "Oh, T'Kuvma is such a wise guy. Forgive me for rejecting him like a fool. I want to bring you and your sarcophagus ship back into this war." And then he ends up betraying Vok, taking that ship. And L'Rell and Vok are now on their own with a plan to go to her mother's house, House Mokai.
Yeah. But left for dead in the graveyard of ships.
In the remains of the Shinju.
Yep.
Which I figured they were going to use those sets again eventually, because they built like a bridge for the Shinju, and it wasn't just like redresses of the Discovery sets.
Right, wholly different thing. Just real quick aside, 1 or 2 things. I did think it was when Cole was still sort of playing up his loyalty to him, he actually knelt before Vok. Mm-hmm. And I did like the line where Vok says, he's like, "That's not necessary." He's like, "Only our enemies kneel before us." And I was like, that's a cool Klingon line. I like it.
Yeah. And I like the way that they're handling the Klingons here.
I also we also got Klingon romance in this, which is when you disarm or not disarm, but you remove the
dilithium processor.
Dilithium processor, and then there's the possible danger of destroying everything. But if you do it with a Klingon lady, you can have sort of a little sexy intimacy there.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to make love in the Klingon style at some point in the show, I think. Dave, what else did you like in this week's episode?
Let's see. So I like Stamets quite a bit, even though he is also an outspoken kind of jerky guy. I like that he has the ability to mouth off to Lorca, and it's unspoken, but clearly the case that Lorca, as big as a hard ass as he can be, can't do shit about it because he needs the fungus expert.
Them,
yeah, and this guy does not like being there.
Yeah, there were two guys who understood this weird mycelium experiment they've been working on, and the other one got turned inside out and twisted into a ball of dead flesh.
Yep.
So yeah, Stamets is very valuable to Lorca. He's a cool character because he is such an asshole to people, but he does seem to be very principled, and I kind of find that to be true in real life.
Who's principled?
Stamets.
Right, yeah.
I think that's what I said.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of true in real life. Like, some of the people I know who kind of have, like, that self-righteousness. Like, they're good with, like the big picture stuff, but when it comes to, just, like, personal interactions, they can be, like, some of the biggest jerks. Like,
sure. Yeah,
some people who think, like, like, I have, like, no carbon footprint.
Right.
Like, why do I have to be polite to this waiter at the restaurant? Like,
I think it's
I go to church every Sunday. I'm a good Christian person, but I'm going to yell at this person who cuts me off in traffic. Or
I want to stick with the waiter thing. I want every example to lead back to being rude to a waiter.
Tip your waiters well, y'all.
And I think you make a good point. That he's based on good observations about people, and I have to confess, and it's still feeling like sort of expecting sort of Star Trek-y, sort of classic Star Trek-y sort of motifs. It's a little bit weird to me that everybody is serving under Lorca, who, there's very few people who seem to be happy under his command. We were trying to figure this out off camera, are most of the other people on board a little bit like the people working on the Manhattan Project, probably motivated by some patriotism and just fear of oh well, if the Klingons win over, we're done, so we might as well, we're going to have to turn our research to war. But Stamets hates Lorca. In this we see that Lieutenant Saru, when Burnham,
he has some reservations about
when Burnham,
Lorca.
when she says that she's going to be doing some,
she tricks him into thinking that she wanted to apologize for being mean to him when they were on the Shinjo, which there's some history to that explored in the David Mack book Desperate Hours, which me and Dave are reading.
Yep.
That we'll talk about at some point. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he finds out she had manipulated him. She wanted to bring him into the creature room.
Yep.
To see if Ripper the tardigrade was a threat.
Right, his threat ganglia would have puffed up.
If you don't remember, whenever he's in danger, those come out. By the way,
I think he doesn't even have to see the danger. It's it's almost preternatural. Things go off.
I heard it described as Spider-Man Spidey sense.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, it clicked for. I was like, okay, I get it now.
Right. He doesn't have to see the threat for those things, for his hackles to rise.
Yeah. It's not something that he has to be
Her apology to him was a bullshit maneuver to get him into the room and see if the creature was a threat to him.
Yeah. But
I did actually. So you're asking the things I like. In a way, I like her manipulativeness. It's sort of the same thing that...
It's Vulcanish.
It's Vulcanish, and so it's the same thing that made her a danger in the first episode, which is, if she's convinced she's in the right, she just does stuff. She doesn't, question herself, she just does it.
And that's why Lorca likes her, because, as he said, universal laws are for lackeys, context is for kings.
Yeah. And, but at the same time, part of me is he's essentially asking for what sort of to take an animal in this episode and weaponize it. They don't get into sort of nitty-gritty specifics. This reminds me a little of Galactica in the sense that they don't want technobabble to ever, I think, probably be front and center if they can avoid it. Mm-hmm. And so they're just make it happen. They're not talking about the specifics of what they're going to do to the tardigrade, the big tardigrade. They're just do it. But she kind of is going along with it, at least ostensibly. It's really only when she sees that it's kind of clearly what they end up doing with it is like causing it harm or distress or something, that she sort of seems to be really having regrets. And now I don't think she was loving it, doing it before. She was kind of doing it under duress, but she didn't seem to be that under duress. It's weird for me that like at this point, 20 minutes into the Star Trek the original series episode that this would be the equivalent of, they'd be sending secret messages to each other about a mutiny to overthrow the dictator Lorca.
I don't know if they would though, because he hasn't done something that messed up yet. I don't think.
Right. At the moment, he seems like he's generally kind of the animal stuff would be considered very dodgy. I think, especially in a Federation future. But a lot of the stuff I think is seen in the light of its wartime efforts.
Yeah, and he never says to like torture the creature or experiment on it. He just says like study it.
Right.
Figure out like what is its claws made out of? What is its armor made out of?
For the record, by the way, I believe they have passive scans that will do that. As what's her name should have known.
But you need someone to like process the data and But yeah, like Commander Landry, I don't like that character. I thought she came off as too much of a dickhead in the last episode.
Yeah.
Like it was hard to believe like someone like that would be in Starfleet when she like calls the prisoners that they bring on board last week. Mm-hmm. She calls them garbage, and she says like, "Well, apparently we're required to feed these animals." Like, do you want prisoners to starve? Like, what's wrong with you? But they killed her off, and I'm happy about that. And
did you think though, like objectively, like I guess I'm not going to miss the character, but objectively speaking, about just as far as the way the scene happened, that thing killed like all those Klingons, and I don't know how many of the other people over on there. At least a platoon of Klingons, or a squad of them.
I think they said a dozen.
And she just opened a door to mess with it.
Yeah, that was dumb. That was.
I just sort of actually wish this scene had just sort of made it a little bit like, yes, she's taking a chance, but no, she's not doing something that's just overtly ridiculous. She did have to presumably get to her position of power on the Discovery by being a little smarter than that. But
maybe she got to that position by being a risk taker, and it finally caught up to her.
That's not the craziest interpretation of it, though. Let's see, what else? By the way, as far as Lorca's quality, is he good? Is he bad? He did go and save a bunch of colonists in there, but they were strategic to the war effort. Seems the classic Trek would have been like, we're doing this because it's the right thing. Lorca's doing, what do you think? Would he have gone if they weren't sitting on dilithium crystals?
I'm not sure, because he definitely seems like his chief objective, his primary motivation is winning the war. And he says that's why Starfleet put him into this position, is to win the war by any means necessary.
I suppose if I were in his spot, I would have to think, this is, we're a super valuable, one-of-a-kind ship. Well, one of a kind now, I guess. Now that the
Glen
is gone,
been destroyed.
We can't go and rescue everybody and risk getting our ship destroyed or damaged when we're so important to the war effort. It'd be like if the people working on the Manhattan projects were called on to do frontline missions and stuff like that. So, in a true wartime effort, a argument could be made for that. Now, Trek has always also had its dramatic conventions of captains beaming down to dangerous planets and stuff like that. So part of that's just a Trek
I don't want to see Lorca like put boots on the ground and like go into the action himself, because I think he is the type of guy who would do that.
We haven't really seen, except for the first episode's cold opening, we haven't really seen boots on the ground, have we? It's all been sort of shipboard.
They did beam over to the sarcophagus ship to try to capture Takuma and ended up assassinating him.
I guess I'm thinking of like, thinking of literally visiting planetary surfaces and stuff.
Yeah, we haven't had like an away team on a planet except for the cold open of the first episode.
Yeah. No, that said, it's literally 4 episodes in, but they have visited other ships and stuff. They've been to the Klingon ships. They've been to the Glen. Let's see what else. What else was notable about this episode?
Any other positives?
Let's see. I like the Klingon stuff, and I found that I think I told you when Klingons talk about prophecies and stuff like that in the early episode, that left me a little bit cold. The sort of more you described earlier that you had said that the Klingons reminded you of TOS Klingons.
Right.
They were the treacherous, backstabby ones, and less about honor. The part of me that's the TOS fan did enjoy that. I also liked seeing them sort of one-on-one and not talking in big councils and groups. So I liked seeing, what's her name, Laurel and Vok together. I thought that was more interesting to me than a lot of the other Klingon interactions have been so far. And
do you think Cole is going to be like the big bad guy for the season 1 story now?
That's an interesting question. He's that for the Klingons in a way.
Is that for Vok?
But have we seen, like, I don't know if we've seen, does he really have, what does he have as his assets? Is he?
Well, he's
treacherous.
He's the head of the House of Kor.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure why Kor isn't the head of the House of Kor.
That's an interesting question. Should he be at that point?
Well, I'm just thinking, like, traditionally with Klingon houses, you're like named Martok, and there's a House Martok. You're the head of House Martok.
Right.
House Martok. Talking about Klingon houses, though, one thing, if we're talking about like things we liked in the Klingons, House Mokai, I'm very interested to see those, because they said that they're like a matriarchal Klingon house.
Right.
We did see a member of House Mokai in the Battle at the Binary Stars on the hologram, and she was a woman Klingon.
Yep.
Who offered support to... She was the first person to speak out in support to Kavma out of all those Klingon leaders. And we also have a reference to House Mokai in the Star Trek Voyager Season 4 episode, The Killing Games, Part 1. Mm-hmm. The cold open of that episode is Janeway on the holodeck as a Klingon. She had been brainwashed to think she was a Klingon warrior fighting for House Mokai. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense that's why you had like a woman Klingon. Yeah, like it was because like they were like a more... It kind of reminds me of like House Tyrell in Game of Thrones, even though that's a super patriarchal society.
Yeah.
House Tyrell, like all like the movers and shakers in that house are all the women.
Mm-hmm.
And that I kind of think that might be how the House Mokai might operate in the Klingon society. It's interesting women's place in Klingon society, because sometimes the Klingons establish that like, there's a whole lot of equality between men and women. In Star Trek 6, we see Chancellor Gorkon die, and his daughter is put in charge of leading the Empire, or at least temporarily. On Star Trek Next Generation, though, they had Duras die, and his sisters weren't able to take over the House Duras.
They were too patriarchal?
Because they were women.
Yeah.
So they had to put his bastard son in charge and start the Klingon Civil War.
Right. I think it's like sometimes people, there's a lot of... It's a little bit of a tropey thing to sort of fall back on. Any sort of kind of ritualistic tribal culture will reflect sort of medieval norms of being patriarchal. They're going to fall back on that a lot. It's certainly true to Earth history, but it can be a little bit of just kind of a trope. And I probably prefer, not only because it sort of feels better for our present times to see a sort of more equal footing society, I at least prefer it to be kind of a more of an, if it's going to be a divide, I'd like it to be kind of interesting like they seem to be doing. Maybe Klingons are kind of slowly accepting the women in power, but they have a particularly kind of interesting hold on it, and could be big mover players in it, but they might have to be a little bit more subtle about it, or I don't know. Maybe they have to be more cunning and cruel. We got to see the ship's doctor on this episode.
Yeah, we got to see Dr. Culber, who we know is Lieutenant Stamets's lover, but they don't bring that up in the episode.
Yeah, did you? There was maybe the way they were talking had a certain familiarity that you could read it into, but it was not by any means played up. So really, like, if you didn't know it, I don't think it would have been obvious. Also on the violence front, his broken nose being fixed in real time made me wince a little bit, because that was like a seriously busted nose.
Yeah, he bumped his face on the desk, I think, when they were trying to run the spore drive.
That's what happens when your ship spins around a full 360 every time you spin that thing up.
But I liked seeing Dr. Culber. Some other things that I liked, talking about desks, I am still digging Captain Lorca's stand-up desk.
Yep.
Just seems very appropriate.
That he would be kind of I don't sit down and stop.
He doesn't sit down this entire episode, by the way. All the stuff of him on the bridge, he is never in the captain's chair. He's standing on the floor of the bridge in front of the chair. And Jason
has he sat down before? I think he has. I feel like I've seen him sit back.
In the last episode, I don't think he.
I almost wonder if that could be a visual identity for him. That he's kind of always on the move, always prowling around.
He might have been sitting down in this episode when he was eating octopus and got the call from Admiral Cornwall, who we now.
I forgot he was eating octopus, but that does work as a visual metaphor for what his treatment of animals. It seems
he had a plate of octopus next to his bowl of fortune cookies. So octopus and fortune cookies sounds like a good combination. But yeah, I'd like the death of Commander Landry. I really like that, and I like the tardigrade. I like Ripper. I'm hoping that these are
very kind of out there sci-fi notions for.
Yes.
Not that they don't do that on. Usually, it's found more among aliens they meet in Star Trek than among the Federation, which, broadly speaking, doesn't have weird organic technology and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, Janeway had the
bioneural circuitry on Voyager.
But I think that was just a way to say, hey, we have a slightly jazzed up ship. It definitely feels weirder. They do feel as they're supposed to be off the grid. They're doing lots of non-Federation-y things. They're doing weird technology. I think the tardigrade thing is a neat idea, but it is like kind of horrific in a way. Like, we don't know. I sort of wish they'd at least tried to say, like, well, do we have some sense of this animal's intelligence level?
I think it's I don't think it's like human level smart. I think it might be like at least as smart as a dog.
Yeah.
Let's say an octopus.
Yeah.
Octopuses are really smart.
Yeah, I know. I read that they can learn to remember, all sorts of things. But
I want to see
it is kind of troubling to watch them forcing it to do
become
stuff.
a member of the crew. I want to see it become like didn't on Sequest and they have like a dolphin that was like part of their crew?
I think you're right. I want them to have that.
Yeah,
I think that'd be kind of cool. I mean, this thing is.
I want Michael to ride it into battle.
Dude, I mean, if they can pull that off, or just
they can fight, like it can fuck some people up.
Right,
we learned that last week.
Yeah, it'd be like, I mean, probably on a higher level than a dire wolf. It killed a dozen Klingons and took not a scratch. So if they do get it on their side, and I'm guessing, I feel like it is not in its future to spend a lot of episodes howling in pain as they use it to navigate. I think that this thing is going to get freed by her, but do you think that they're not going to let her keep it or something like that?
It might learn to cooperate with them and fly the ship around.
Lorca's going to kill it. He's going to kill it if it's not of use to him.
That could be,
even if he has to make it look like it had an accident or got jettisoned into space or something like that. Presumably, like a tardigrade, it might even be able to survive and just ball up. Oh, just as a real quick aside, that Klingon armor, that space
torchbearer armor.
Yeah, that we got to see some more of that. It looked really cool.
Yeah, I like that. And like you, I like the depiction of the Klingons in this episode, and I love that the planet they're using, Corvin 2, has a connection to Trek lore. Mm-hmm. That's where I think it's called the Gilvo, was this creature that showed up a couple times on the Next Generation, and I think the Grand Nagus had one as a pet on Deep Space Nine. But it was the episode where Alexander comes to live on the Enterprise with Worf. He I want to go look at all the animals and see the Gilvo, and it was just the stupid puppet behind a glass screen. But
not intended to be a puppet, but do you mean a cheap special effect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love
not like Kermit the Frog or something.
No, it was an actual creature from the Corvin system.
Kermit the Frog is on the Orville.
Yeah,
it's a thing. Different Trek.
What about? Was there anything that you didn't like in this episode?
Let's see. There's still sort of that ongoing mental struggle a little bit to kind of find a hero. I kind of want somebody to, and it's in many ways it's simply not that show. It's like trying to find a hero on Galactica. everybody is struggling with their own problems. I don't think there's any one character that I'm like, oh, this guy, when I see him, whatever decision he makes, he's always going to be trying to do the right thing, or she's always going to be trying to do the right thing. Nobody is quite that person. All of them are working under some burden or weight, and Burnham is trying to like redeem herself, but her method of redemption seems to be doing some stuff that might be at best shady, or at the very least kind of off the grid and kind of difficult for someone who's an explorer at heart. Stamets's blackmailed Lorca seems to be potentially morally compromised. Yeah, I'd kind of like to see a hero emerge. I want that in Star Trek. No, it's like my gut instinct needs it.
I'm thinking that might be the culmination of the first season story arc,
right?
Although I could be wrong.
I'll be curious also, like, if this show has any sort of how the mortality rate will ultimately play out. Now, are we going to see if say that there is some sort of uprising against Lorca because he goes
off the deep end,
which
is not as too far out of traditional Star Trek, because the original series and even later shows were full of Starfleet captains and admirals who went off the rocker.
Yep. And in some ways, I suppose I kind of hope that they don't do that, just because I don't. Sometimes you're like, wow, Starfleet's supposed to be so great, and yet there's always some rogue commander off doing something and taking over a ship. It's good for drama, and it's also.
I like the idea of actually seeing one of those up close. Like, well, what was life like on that guy's ship before he went crazy?
Right. And Lorca is still a guy who, I suppose, he, like you say, we're trying to figure out if he, again, this is pre-show warm-up stuff, we're trying to figure out if he's done anything, like, really terrible, and I feel like probably the worst thing I've seen him actually do that's confirmed is be cold-hearted towards the destruction of the Glen.
Yeah.
He seemed to show no empathy whatsoever for however many, presumably hundreds, they lost on that, and his observation was, shame to lose such a good ship.
Lose that ship, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a horrifically callous thing to say, but unless we found out he did something to manipulate the release, the experimentation, so it would fail and they could rise to glory or whatever, or he released the tardigrade thing, all of which are possibilities.
Yeah.
But until they reveal that, he's a callous bastard who maybe doesn't have much empathy. It doesn't necessarily mean he's always cruel or a bad person. He may be a good tool for the war effort precisely because he has low empathy. But those are very weird if you think about it. Like, that's a weird thing to be talking about in Star Trek. You remember I mentioned this to you.
It's a weird thing to be talking about on like a case where it's stretched out through 15 episodes, and potentially longer. If it was just like one episode, though, like we're like
this is Jellicoe.
Weird admiral or
He's
like a new captain or something.
But yeah, like you remember, I used to kind of laugh at this because when I was in my hateration days for Next Generation, when Riker spoke of Jellicoe and he says, "There's no joy under your command," and I'm like, dude, you're in a borderline wartime situation and you're looking for a joyful, happy time experience. You are like the biggest wuss in space, and Jellicoe is exactly the guy they need there.
So like 19-year-old Dave needs to be watching Star Trek Discovery now.
That's possible. But the Star Trek Discovery is a more sophisticated take on that. It's just weird. Yes, it's weird to see it, as you say, a prolonged version of Jellicoe. Where we are meant to kind of, over time, empathize with him, hate him sometimes, maybe.
It's making me hard to form opinions on the show.
Oh, yeah, so what's the metaphor you used earlier?
Played saying
like, it was like, oh, what's the best episode so far, and all that, would be like choosing the...
Yeah, like chapters out of a book.
Right. Oh, yeah, I loved Chapter 7 of Game of Thrones the best. That was so good. In fact, sometimes there are standout chapters, but nobody, really, that's not a point of discussion.
Like, no one is going to be like, what's your top 10 favorite chapters of the Harry Potter novel series?
Right.
Whereas you would typically make like a top 10 list of favorite Star Trek episodes.
Yep.
It's going to be harder to do that with Discovery, though, just because it is such a different format.
Yep. I would say even something like Galactica, to which I think Discovery certainly owes some debt, had more somewhat isolated episodes, and here we're almost moment to moment right after the previous episodes.
Yeah.
Barring a 6-month gap. So that they Lorca brought that creature back, and like you said, he immediately did show her. Do you think, broadly speaking, the rest of the crew knows about that? They knew about that.
I don't think it's too. My original
because they were doing
last
the navigation.
week was it was it was going to be a top secret thing, and only Lorca and Landry know about. I thought that was going to be his secret room,
right?
Where he
and a few episodes in, Burnham would discover it, and it would be a big moral contention. Yeah, but no, he just shows it to her, and he's like, "Do something with this."
Yeah, so that's interesting. It kind of makes me not as weary of Lorca. It kind of makes me think he might be more trustworthy than I was thinking.
Yeah,
it keeps us guessing though, which
it's still very unpredictable, which is also something that I like about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious. I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out.
You know what's interesting is more often a traditional Trek thing would also be a little more interaction between them and the people they saved. There, it's like they got in and they got out.
Yeah.
Let's real quick talk about space battle stuff in a minute too, because there was both a simulated battle and a kind of quick but real battle.
Yeah, we open with a simulated battle before the credits, and Lorca seems disappointed in people's reaction times. Right. They weren't able to defeat all the simulated ships before they were taken out, and then we finally get to see the Discovery go into some actual starship battle above the mining colony, and we were having a hard time trying to figure out what the exact tactics they were using were. It looked like they dropped in, they let everyone shoot at them till their shields were almost completely depleted, and then they spore drove out. I guess that's the past tense for spore drive. They spore drove away. And they left some explosives in the air and blew up all the Klingons.
Right. I think, it was essentially by using the spore drive, which essentially, for lack of a better word, allows them to teleport away instantly like Nightcrawler from the X-Men, and they left a bomb in the place. It's, by the way, that's another kind of... They didn't explain it. It's a sort of a move away from technobabble. I almost wonder if that's maybe a little too far. I would have liked to have heard him say, transport out, antimatter torpedo bundle or whatever. Yeah. And he's like, hit the drive now, and so we kind of see a little bit more precisely.
Go. That's his. This captain doesn't say engage. He says go is going to be his catchphrase. I think
he is terse and to the point, and he's not florid.
Yeah, it seems appropriate.
Yeah, it does. In fact, when you think about it, they've actually all been appropriate on Star Trek over the years. Their versions of engage. I have a particular favorite, weirdly from the Kelvin verse. I like Pike's punch it. Yeah.
Well, that was because J.J. Abrams liked Star Wars, and that's what Han Solo would say to Chewie.
Oh, now you've ruined it. I liked it when he was just kind of a little bit more of a kind of. Well, it actually, I think I like more that it fit the energy of those movies. He himself was, I guess you could say by the book, but he was by the book in kind of a cool way and not like a tight ass way. And I felt like he kind of the pacing was kind of boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, he was very JFK-ish, very snazzy leader.
It had a certain crispness to it. So yeah, JFK is a good comparison. But anyway, it was cool seeing these, but I still sort of want to see I guess I would say somewhat more extended battles. I felt it was a little weird seeing him take the hits. It does make sense that he would use unorthodox tactics. I don't know if they could have easily taken him out, but based on their simulation, they were having trouble with just one-on-one fights. They used bomb and teleportation stuff, spore drive, to do what they needed to do.
I'm looking forward to seeing more of Lorca in space combat, because he's supposed to be really good at that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like how in the simulation and in the actual battle, how he wasn't in the captain's chair, he was standing on the front of the bridge and giving commands constantly, talking to everyone on the bridge, telling helmsman what to do, tactical what to do.
He's very engaged.
He had his hands up, like he was
almost like he was a conductor.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like he was conducting an orchestra of war.
Oh, all right, very poetic. I didn't know we were going to wax poetic today. But again, I think that's a good choice of words. If indeed, as it seems like could be the case, that he is almost never seated and kind of has a little bit more of that jungle cat prowl, but is also that kind of suggests a certain engagement with the crew. There's a scene in was it Henry V, where famous scene where he goes and he kind of under disguise, wearing like a cloak, he goes out and on the eve of battle he talks to all the troops one-on-one.
Yeah.
And he doesn't say, "I'm your captain," he's just making conversation with them. And there could be a little bit of that to Lorca, the guy who's... It's not. I don't see exactly him hanging out with them in the break room, or at the cafeteria. I don't think that's who he is. But he does seem like a guy who, at the very least on the tactical level, likes to kind of work very directly with them. I could see by the way he does that, how he could be sort of an inspiring commander. That's a part of you that would want to work for him. It seems like people do want to please him, even if sometimes it's a little bit out of fear.
There's like the whole time I'll be like, yeah, this guy's gonna turn into Commodore Decker. This guy's gonna turn into the captain from the Omega Glory.
Yeah.
It's just I can't make up my mind on how I feel about Lorca. Like I said, I'm having a hard time forming an opinion, so I'm mainly just having reactions and not so much opinions.
The one thing I do know is that basically anytime Jason Isaacs is on the screen, I'm liking his performance and his...
Yeah, he's super engaging.
Yeah, I feel like they've created a strong character in him. That he's enigmatic is to the credit of the writers and the actor.
They were very careful not to make him too similar to Patrick Stewart's Picard, or didn't want to make him like the anti-Picard, or they stayed away from that.
He's got different levels.
I think that's why they gave him the American accent, which in a lot of ways kind of makes him seem like more of a warmonger.
You think anybody who's American is just kind of has a little warmonger in them?
Americans take pride in
we like our big
what
guns.
we perceive as an ability to show up and kick ass.
Right.
Sometimes you're a bunch of Vietnamese farmers and you kick our ass for a decade, but that's in the past. But the idea of this gung ho, we can do it. I'm gonna win the war. That type of attitude.
Yeah.
I think the American accent does help with that.
Yeah. I wonder if there was we thought we detected a little bit of Southern. Just a touch of Southern accent in
which
there.
it might be just because that's a little bit easier to do,
right?
With his natural English accent, but he's an interesting character. I'm curious. I want to I hope that years from now, I don't know how long Lorca's going to be around on the show, but if he's just around for a season or two, I don't know what the plan is. Obviously, I'm curious to read books. If someone writes a book about his origin, or when he's coming up through Starfleet, or he's definitely a character I could spend a lot of time with. And
we know we're going to see more of Takufma in the comics.
Yes,
and I can easily see Lorca, but I can also see them zeroing in on Stamets or any of the other characters. Tilly, who remains the character who I kind of I guess I wouldn't say is she's not some true blue hero either. But she's
your favorite character.
Her kind of I don't know. Actually, Lorca might be my favorite character, but her kind of oddball giddiness is kind of always entertaining, and is a bit of lightness in the otherwise darkness.
You like her more than Wesley Crusher in season 1 of Next Generation?
I'm going to say yes. I feel like there's one other thing we should be sure to mention, which is the kind of the B or C plot of the episode is. Michael Burnham, who's she herself is she does two big things in this episode. One is she goes full on science tactical and figures out what the deal is with this tardigrade. Very much kind of you see her thought processes, how she worked out what it can and can't do, somewhat manipulatively, but she did figure out how it worked. That it was a peaceful creature.
Just real quick before you list the other things she did.
Yep.
Every episode we've seen her do something clever, whether it's trick the computer to get out of the brig, or
evade the tardigrade and lead it away
last
from...
week evade the tardigrade.
Mm-hmm.
I love Burnham's so capable.
Yeah,
and they have a great balance where she's also very compromised in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And what were the other two things that she does?
So actually, well, there's only there was essentially that sort of problem-solving thing, which in a way she builds her own problem because she's like, oh, the creature isn't warlike. The creature has this ability to interface, sort of like almost on a galactic navigational level, and so in a way she's like, oh, here are the keys to the car. Here's how to manipulate and abuse this animal, or at least make use of it. And so she creates a problem that she was probably going to have to resolve in the near future. But her other thing is her own emotional issue because she is given the last will and testament of Michelle Yeoh's character.
Philippa Georgiou.
Yep.
Captain Philippa Georgiou.
And is putting off looking at it. What's your interpretation of that?
I love that idea of you get this suitcase or this package and it's gonna beep until you open it. Yeah. And just I can just picture how annoying that would be because I could see myself as being someone who put that off to the side or something. Yeah. And because I have a weird tolerance of annoying noises. Oh. That's probably why I like to hear myself speak so much. And I could imagine my girlfriend or someone else around me being just open the fucking package. I'm tired of hearing this thing beep.
I'm gonna quick tell you a story from the store. I manage a comic shop called Rogues Gallery in Round Rock. We have a credit card machine which when you print out the receipt, if it starts to beep to tell you to tear the receipt off. Mm-hmm. Now, very often when that occurs, we're kind of packaging up the whatever they just bought, or talking to the customer, and at some point we'll be like, "Well, do you want a copy of the receipt?" Because it'll actually print out a follow-up one afterwards. I have a very low tolerance for those repeated noises, so I will go ahead and get that receipt, get it done real quick. And get it in their hands. I'll print out a copy of the receipt, even if I don't know for sure if they want it sometimes, to end the beeping. Probably there's a way to turn it off, we just haven't discovered it yet because we're stupid. But anyway, my coworkers...
Burnham would figure it out because she's a problem solver.
She's a problem solver.
When she
would figure out a way to torture an animal so that it could work.
Oh, she also figured out the code last week for Lieutenant Stamets.
Code.
Yeah, when he's go mess around with he gives her a TOS style data disk.
Right.
And he's there's something wrong with this code. Go work on it.
Yeah, she's sort of casually brilliant, and she puts pieces together. Yeah,
Saru says that she is the smartest officer he's ever met. Yep. Aside from her mutiny, he thinks that was stupid.
Every once in a while, I've seen in comics and movies they'll drop that sort of claim on a character that they're the smartest this or
they
the best
tell
this,
you but don't show you.
Here they have definitely been backing it up.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to reinforce that.
Now, psychologically, though, I did want to say, what do you think? Why do you think? What's your assessment of why Burnham was holding off? Is it just opening old wounds?
Yeah, just she doesn't like to deal with emotions. That's probably from her Vulcan upbringing. I think that she was probably more able to deal with emotions when she had Captain Georgiou, over her, and when she was under her wing, and that was kind of the point of Sarek taking her to that ship and getting her a Starfleet commission. Yep. Was for.
But I guess she's not going to be calling on Sarek all the time. We've got
we still haven't seen that. We also haven't seen any more flashbacks. So. Yep.
I think they wanted to probably say, "Hey, we're not doing the Arrow thing where the island is in every issue or episode."
I want to see more of the Shinjo. I'm really digging the Desperate Hours book. And I'm hoping that we get a Shinjo comic book series. I think would be really cool.
That would be interesting. Sort of essentially in the heyday.
Yeah, of her kind of being an asshole to Saru and his threat Gangula.
I did feel the ending was a little bit kind of trite on this one. Honestly, it reminded me a little bit more of a Next Generation type of ending to have her reflecting on the sort of positive feelings of Captain Georgiou and the telescope that she had, which we saw in the first episode, that she willed to her. They've gone so dark with the show that it can't help but feel a little bit kind of trite. I think when they're
I need this stuff though, or else it loses the humanity to it. I need the
sure. But I think what I would have liked to have seen it played out to fit in with the show is a conversation between her and somebody else, somebody who's oh, you're a Vulcan. It's like we can't have like excess material on this ship. It's very carefully balanced. Can we go ahead and destroy this? You're a Vulcan. This is old tech that has low use, minimal use. And see what would she argue to save it. Put her in some kind of situation where there's a little bit more of a conversation to be had about it. I just would have liked to have seen her engage with it emotionally rather than kind of just reflect on it. That's just a random example, and I'm not quite sure what I would have liked to have seen other than it didn't quite, I think, hit the emotional beat that I wanted it to.
We should describe what the actual ending was, and it is she does finally open the briefcase. She receives a telescope and a holographic message.
Big in Star Trek Discovery.
We got a lot of holograms these days now, but it's telling her like, "Oh, I'm sure you're the captain of your own ship now," and it's like, "Oh, like that's gotta suck to hear that."
Yeah,
but I love that she willed her a telescope because it makes sense in this future society where we're kind of beyond the materialistic desires of 21st century life, that people wouldn't have many possessions, or like the few things that they did have would have like strong
emotional resonance,
or what's the word, sentimental value. And so like that's like pretty much like all she had to give away was like a telescope, maybe like some books and a bottle of Picard wine,
right? But here's the thing. Presumably, Burnham. We know she came on much more Vulcan than she left. But
yes.
I wonder. Did we ever see her quarters on the Shenzhou?
We did when she went in there to call Sarek. Did
she have any
Vulcan
ornamentation?
A little bit, but
Vulcan, like Spock sometimes has some little bits of his Vulcan mystical stuff floating around in there, or a harp or something like that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Vulcanishness.
I was just wondering if, presumably, she came out of her Vulcan shell enough for Philippa to think that she would want that, or maybe she didn't know if she would want it, but felt that it was appropriate anyway, and maybe she would learn to love it, or it would give her something to be sentimental about, which is not easy for Vulcans. I don't know.
Do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
I'm gonna give it a rating on the out of 5 this time. I'm gonna say it was for me a 3 out of 5. A good episode, but for me not as strong as the fourth one, which had really strong character dynamics in every scene. I was a little bit weirded out, and like even in this rather dark setting, that we did not see her at any point discuss with anyone. I think this would have been an interesting, uncomfortable conversation to have with her and say, Saru, is to talk about like, hey, the captain has asked me to do this thing that I don't know if it's like, is this what you guys do here? I just kind of want to see somebody voice a little bit. It's a little bit of weirdly the same way I felt in the first season of Lost when they're on the island. It's for somebody to sort of recognize, not quite on a meta level, the situation they're in and talk about it. They immediately got into their internal politics and who's on whose side and what's that creature in the forest, but nobody kind of was like, oh man, there's a lot of weird things going on here, that so many people survived this plane crash, that there's this strange thing out there, and then some of your stories are adding up to weird things like, do we think something mystical is happening? I kind of would have liked for a little bit more conversation for between people about the weirdness that they're in. I think TV writers don't do that, though, because it's also boring.
Because these are like things that the audience is already thinking about, so why waste time? It's like retreading to...
I suppose so, but I also feel like I want them to, I want her to at least be human enough to recognize that, presumably in Star Trek's, future or Federations, that I'm guessing not a lot of animal testing. I bet they've kind of found ways to do simulations and stuff to do that, and this feels like a step back. And I would like her to say, like, to talk about that with someone. Well,
it looks like in the trailer for next week's episode, that's going to be a big point of contention between Saru and Burnham.
Right.
It looks like she's going to be like, this tardigrade doesn't like being used for our navigation. We should not do it. And he's going to be like, no, we have to do it. Because we find out that next week Captain Lorca has been captured by Klingons, which I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. I feel like Lorca under duress like that, I feel like it would almost potentially be like a little bit of a Hannibal Lecter situation, or a Rorschach situation. You might think he's trapped in there with you, but you're trapped in there with him. I feel like he actually could have him under his thumb by the time it's all done.
Yeah, or we might even get like some less cerebral, more actiony, running around with phasers, shooting his way out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to see that. I guess my final thoughts on this episode would be, I actually think this might be my favorite episode of the show so far, just because I'm, you want
a tardigrade war pet.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. Yeah, I want someone to ride this tardigrade into battle before the end of the show. Please.
It wouldn't take much to win me over to that idea.
One of the things that kind of threw me off going into the show with the first couple episodes was that I was still trying to figure it out, and I kind of wanted to already get an idea of what the show's going to be week to week. Get to know the characters and the setting. And I feel like after these last 2 episodes, I can finally start wrapping my head around it. I still think I'm gonna have to wait till the end of the season before I have like a strong, solid opinion. But I think that I'm in the right headspace now. Like, I get where the show's going.
Right.
I like the discovery. I like the spore drive. I like the tardigrade. I've liked Saru from the beginning. I've liked Michael from the beginning, and I'm getting to like Lorca. So yeah, I'm definitely like more engaged with the show now than I have been since the premiere, and I'm very excited for next week's episode, which we probably won't have our podcast posted until Tuesday. Normally we're getting them out on Monday nights. Next week will probably be early Tuesday morning or sometime later in Tuesday.
Little scheduling craziness.
Yeah, but. And that episode is called "Choose Your Pain," I believe. Which
another good title.
A good title, but these episode titles kind of scare me.
Up, yeah. So far we've had Pain, Butcher. It's a little on the dark side of things.
Even Vulcan Hello has a very
right
negative meaning after we learn what that was, but. So we'll be talking about Choose Your Pain soon,
and we're getting close to talking about the first Star Trek Discovery novel.
Yes, so that'll be some point in November when the show goes on hiatus, because we'll need something to talk about then, and also Dave and I are both slow readers.
Yes,
I think I'm 50 pages in.
I had to go buy a car last week, so I got distracted from. I had
to go buy a water heater. Put that in last week.
Nobody cares about your baby story.
Anyways, yeah, enough of our
but we're getting there.
Parties.
This is also giving you time to go, and you can read along with the rest of the class, or beat us to the end, and then you'll be there for the discussion.
Yeah. So keep your eyes out for that in November if that sounds interesting. And next week we'll be talking about Choose Your Pain. So until then, live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex-Trek. Or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.